passed the next few months collecting nursery items, and Lee became the father at Fort Monroe on September 16, 1832. Mary gave birth to George Washington Custis Lee. His father had an immediate effect upon the baby, for Mary told a friend, "If he wakes up in the night and cries, and Robert speaks to him, he stops immediately." In November, Mrs. Lee took the baby to Arlington to be displayed to his namesake and grandfather. About Thanksgiving, Lee wrote to his wife, "My sweet little boy, what would I give to see him? The house is a perfect desert without him and his mother, and there is no comfort in it. Take good care of him, Molly, and don't let him be spoiled. Direct him in everything and leave nothing to the guidance of his nurse. I am waking all night to hear his sweet little voice, and if in the morning I could only feel his little arms around my neck and his dear little heart fluttering against my breast, I should be happy too." Mrs. Lee obviously didn't like garrison life. She had grown up in a great mansion, but she came back to the tiny apartment at Fort Monroe for short periods. Then she would head again to the spacious home of Arlington. Lee knew his wife was spoiled. She had been born to direct a great plantation, and being the wife of an army officer was difficult for her. It wasn't until 1832 that Lee was even a full second lieutenant. In 1834, Lee was reassigned from Fort Monroe to Washington as assistant to the chief of engineers. He tried to rent a place in the city, but ended up living at his in-laws' great home. Every morning, Lee left the mansion to ride horseback across the bridge to the Capitol. He left behind the 8-columned front porch which made Arlington House so distinctive. Lee left the mansion for Washington like any other commuter, returning nightly on his horse. Lee's army career moved slowly for a number of years. His second child, Mary Custis, was born in 1835. Mrs. Lee became ill following the birth and was confined to bed for months. Lee was shocked when he returned from the Great Lakes, where he had been ordered to make military surveys. His wife was suddenly reduced to semi-invalidism. "Molly," Lee said, "why didn't you write me how ill you've been?" She smiled weakly. "I wrote you that I was ill. There was no point in telling you anything to grieve your mind when you had such pressing assignments." "Your beautiful hair," her husband exclaimed. "It got so tangled that I cut it off," she smiled weakly. Lee comforted his wife, assuring her that they would go to some mineral springs where she might recover from her long illness. But when the couple returned from the supposed curing waters, Mrs. Lee was no better. In fact, she was almost like his mother had been most of her life. A relative who saw Lee at that sad time said, "I never saw a man so changed and so saddened." Although Mrs. Lee was always in poor health after that, she bore 5 more children. William Henry Fitzhugh, called Rooney, was born in June 1837. Annie came in 1839, Agnes in 1841. Robert Edward was born in 1843 and named for his father against Lee's wishes. Mildred, the last, was born in 1846. "The years have been difficult for Lee since his wife's long illness," a military friend said. "Yes, some people call him moody," said a young officer. "He is not his cheerful, teasing self. He has become more serious, a mature father." For a while, Lee considered resigning his commission to take care of his wife and children. He wrestled with the choice of duty to his family and duty to his calling. His own feelings seemed to be that his family yearnings were selfish. He explained to Mrs. Lee during her illness when she wanted him to come home, "Why do you urge my immediate return and tempt me in the strongest manner to endeavor to get excused from the performance of a duty imposed on me by my profession for the pure gratification of my private feelings?" When Lee was home, he was close and loving to his children and enjoyed romping with them. One of his favorite activities was to get into bed with all of them and read aloud. It was a time of warm happiness for his children to remember always. Lee set the example in faith by regularly attending church. When he was with his family, they all trooped to the Episcopal church in which he was reared. Mrs. Lee was often slow in getting ready. Her husband sometimes walked ahead of her because it was against his nature to be tardy. But Lee's concern with family and church was slowly being pressed into a secondary position. War with Mexico seemed certain. Lee was now a captain. On May 13, 1846, the United States declared war on her southern neighbor. In August, Lee received orders which sent him to join the military action.